Hi, I'm Todd Goodwin. Today I want to talk about a really fascinating behavioral phenomenon called secondary gain. This is something I've seen over the years in my practice as a hypnotist, and it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it can be one of the most confounding and frustrating until discovered. But once that is discovered and dealt with, it can be one of the most fascinating examples of how we manage to trap ourselves or sabotage our goals. Secondary gain is the benefit you get from the problem you have. And if you were to solve that issue, it would present a bigger problem than. I'm just going to jump right into an example here. I had a client once who had dealt with being overweight for maybe 15 years. And she had tried every diet you could imagine. She had even worked with a hypnotist with only moderate success because she was really focusing on the eating habits and the exercise motivation, which is fairly typical. What happened was she was about 50 or 60 pounds overweight when I met her in her mid-30s. And when we were talking, she told me that she had attempted to lose weight many times. And what happened was, whether it was on a diet or with a hypnotist, as she was losing weight and she was getting closer to her target goal weight, which she had back in high school and college, she started getting more stressed and more nervous. Now we know, and I've mentioned in some of these videos, that what drives the compulsive behavior to overeat or to eat junk food or sweets is that the benefit that someone gets in the short term from pleasure, eating, let's say, temporarily neutralizes the uncomfortable feeling that they were having before they felt that urge to eat. It's the same thing with someone who smokes. If they feel stressed or they feel uncomfortable, they think, I'm going to have a cigarette or I'm going to have an alcoholic beverage because that'll make me feel better. And very often it does. And that's enough to create a compulsion and a compulsive habit, which in some cases translates into an addiction. In this case, we already understand that. And she understands that because the hypnotist she worked with before explained it to her. However, despite the fact that she was addressing the eating habits at a subconscious level, she wasn't really dealing with the root cause. The emotional eating was a symptom. The emotion was a symptom. It was a symptom of a thought or a belief that she wasn't safe being thin. Now, how did this possibly happen? Well, through our work together, we discovered very quickly that what was the problem was the way she thought about being thin, and it went all the way back to when she was in college. You see, back in college, she was very attractive. She was actually still attractive at 50 or 60 pounds overweight, but you wouldn't have noticed it because she was so overweight. But when she was thin, she was attractive to many men, and she happened to be the victim of date rape back when she was in college. Now, that was very traumatic for her emotionally. So in the short term, she was dealing with it by eating a lot of junk food and ice cream and all of that. And obviously, she put on the weight in that process, but it helped her cope with the stress because she never really dealt with the issue, the trauma itself. Well, what happened was, she learned at a subconscious level that as she gained weight, she wasn't being noticed by men as much. People weren't noticing her. She became invisible because she was that fat girl. So throughout her 20s, even though she was frustrated being single, frustrated not having relationships, not having the intimacy she wanted, and the physical stress and inconvenience of being overweight and not fitting into clothes and all of those issues, at least she was safe. So here she was in her mid-30s when I met her, and I said to her, is it possible that your subconscious is keeping you fat so that you won't get raped again? Now, at first, she said, well, that's absurd. I know I'm not going to be raped again. The likelihood of that happening is really remote. And I said, I understand, but your conscious mind knows that. Your subconscious had attached so much emotional pain to being raped that it would do whatever it could to prevent you from having to experience that again. And as a result, being overweight, which happened almost by accident because she was overeating, that became a very convenient way of being invisible, and she was suddenly protected by that fat. It was protection for her. So whenever she tried to lose weight, she became increasingly nervous or stressed or anxious because on some level her subconscious said, "You're starting to get noticed again. What if you get raped again? That's going to be horrible." And then she would start sabotaging and she'd start eating again. So how did she overcome this weight issue? It really had nothing to do with telling her as a hypnotist how to eat healthier. It really had everything to do with resolving the emotional trauma from the rape. And we did that very quickly. In 2 or 3 sessions, the emotional charge from that experience was gone. She was no longer upset by what happened back 15 years earlier. And she suddenly felt very calm with the idea of being healthy and fit. So she was able to automatically start eating healthier immediately, and the weight started coming off. So that's secondary gain, when the problem is actually a solution to a bigger problem. Secondary gain is the benefit you get from the problem you have. And if you were to solve that issue, in this case weight, it would present a bigger problem than being overweight. So if you're finding that it's difficult for you to overcome an issue, and you find that you're self-sabotaging all the time, and that even if you've worked with a hypnotist who had very good intentions, if it didn't actually hit the nail on the head and resolve the issue, what I've found with my clients is when something is not working, there's usually a secondary gain and there's a benefit to the problem. If that benefit is not addressed, in this case of this woman, protection, then the problem will persist. Once the protection or the benefit, the secondary gain is no longer necessary, because the subconscious is all about protection. Once it's no longer necessary, then the subconscious doesn't need to maintain that state, the habit, or the in her case, obesity. It didn't need it anymore. And then it was easy to let it go. So ask yourself, if you're stuck, what benefit might you be getting from having that problem? And look at the other side, what could the cost or disadvantage be of solving it? You just want to make sure that solving the problem is a bigger benefit to you than keeping it. If it is a bigger benefit, then hypnosis should work very easily. If it's not, then whoever you're working with needs to really deal with the secondary gain issue. Once that's resolved, it's usually as easy as pie. Well, that's probably not a good analogy to use, at least for her, but last time I talked with her, she's still at a healthy weight. So that's greater understanding for you in the interest of self-awareness. I'm Todd Goodwin. Have a great day.